The Labour government, in a pursuit of so-called social value, has unveiled new procurement rules that prioritise virtue signalling over value for money. This isn't just an economic misstep, it's a dangerous ideological agenda that will have far-reaching consequences for British businesses and taxpayers alike. Hello and welcome, I'm Miriam Cates and this is GBN Originals. Let's be clear about what's happening here. The government has essentially told companies that if they want to win public contracts, they must demonstrate how they will help to achieve Sir Keir Starmer's 5 missions and demonstrate their commitment to nebulous concepts like strengthening community cohesion and accelerating net zero. This seems to be another example of state expansion and taxpayer-funded social engineering dressed up in the language of progress. What we're witnessing is the infiltration of woke ideology into the very heart of our economic system. The National Procurement Policy Statement, which replaces a sensible guide drafted by the previous Conservative government, now explicitly pushes for net zero targets and for diversity goals. This is a far cry from the Procurement Act of 2023, which rightly focused on maximising value for taxpayers' money. This situation is absurd. At a time when our public finances are under immense strain and when families across the country are struggling with the cost of living crisis, the government thinks it's appropriate to use procurement as a tool for virtue signalling. This isn't just foolish. As Sir Jacob Rees-Mogg has said, it may well be unlawful. But let's consider the real-world implications of these new rules. By enforcing what Andrew Bowie MP rightly calls mad targets on companies, the government is effectively guaranteeing that the British public will face higher bills and worse services. This isn't speculation, it's the inevitable result of prioritising ideological checkboxes over efficiency and cost effectiveness. Moreover, these new guidelines are a slap in the face to the hard-working businesses that form the backbone of our economy. Instead of being judged on the quality of their work or the competitiveness of their pricing, companies are now expected to demonstrate how they'll remove barriers to entry for young people and underrepresented groups, or to show their commitment to environmental sustainability. This requires a performative nod to the woke agenda without any evidence that productivity will be improved.
Using the internet without a VPN, a virtual private network, is a bit like taking to the road without car insurance. All it takes is one unlucky moment to cost you a lot of cash. This video's sponsor is Private Internet Access. They are the VPN to help keep you safe. Click the link in the description below to find out why over 30 million people have downloaded PIA to protect themselves online. A virtual private network is an app that hides your IP address and helps keep your data private. When you're browsing the internet at home, you give up a large amount of data to businesses, to shops, and indeed to social media giants too. Hackers have the ability to steal your personal data with ease, including sensitive information such as passwords, keystrokes, and even your personal photos. Private Internet Access helps protect your personal data by encrypting your internet connection to keep your data out of the hands of cyber criminals. And it's not just hackers either to be concerned about. Information can be censored too. When Canada passed their C18 bill, social media giants decided to ban news content on their platforms. But PIA can protect your ability to consume the news and content you love. Private Internet Access is available for Windows users, Mac OS, Android, Linux, iOS, and you can use one PIA subscription to protect an unlimited amount of devices. And we've got a huge GB News discount for you too. Click the link in this video's description and you'll get a massive 83% off PIA. That's under £2 a month, the price of a coffee, and you'll get an extra 4 months completely free on top. Also, there's a 30-day money-back guarantee too. Visit piavpn.com/GB News to start protecting yourself digitally today.
By funneling more money to charities and NGOs as part of this new focus on social value, the government is creating a self-perpetuating cycle of dependency on state funding. This isn't about helping communities, it's about expanding the reach of government. We must also consider the timing of this announcement. The Labour government, perhaps still reeling from an unpopular budget last autumn, seems more concerned with pandering to their public sector base than addressing the real economic challenges facing our nation. As Andrew Bowie rightly points out, this is just another step in the wrong direction, burdening taxpayers with additional costs at a time when fiscal responsibility should be the priority. This is, of course, deeply ironic. While claiming to promote social value, These new procurement rules will likely have the opposite effect. By adding layers of bureaucracy and onerous new requirements, the government is making it harder for smaller, local businesses to compete for contracts. This isn't progress, it's a backward step. Let's not forget the lessons of the past. The procurement process became mired in controversy during the pandemic, with accusations of cronyism and wasteful spending. Instead of learning from these mistakes and streamlining the process, the current government seems intent on adding more complexity and ideological baggage. What we're seeing is a fundamental misunderstanding of the role of government in a free society. The state's job is not to dictate social values or to enforce ideological conformity through economic policy. Its primary responsibility is to create an environment where businesses can thrive and innovation can flourish, and taxpayers' money is spent wisely and efficiently. The concept of virtue signalling has become all too prevalent in our political discourse, but rarely has it been so blatantly enshrined in government policy. This new procurement guide is a textbook example of prioritising the appearance of virtue over actual, meaningful action. We must ask ourselves, what's the end game here? Is it truly about improving society, or is it about consolidating power and control under the guise of progress? The answer, I fear, is all too clear. This ideological push is not just confined to procurement. We're seeing a similar pattern across various sectors of our society. From education to healthcare, from energy policy to immigration, there's a consistent thread of prioritising woke ideology over practical solutions and common sense. Take, for example, the government's obsession with net zero targets. While we all want a cleaner environment, the rush to implement these targets without proper consideration of the economic consequences is reckless. It's leading to higher energy costs, putting British industries at a competitive disadvantage, and potentially causing job losses in key sectors. Similarly, the focus on diversity quotas and targets is creating a culture of division rather than unity. Instead of promoting true equality of opportunity, these policies often result in reverse discrimination and a lowering of standards. They undermine the principle of meritocracy that has been a cornerstone of British success for generations. The government's approach to these issues is emblematic of a wider problem in our political discourse. There's a growing tendency to prioritise feelings over facts, to elevate subjective experiences over objective reality. This is a dangerous path that leads to poor decision-making and ultimately harms the very people it claims to help. We must also consider the international implications of these policies. As Britain seeks to forge new trade relationships in the post-Brexit era, we need to be competitive and agile. These new procurement rules send exactly the wrong message to potential international partners and investors. They signal that Britain is more concerned with ticking ideological boxes than with being a dynamic, business-friendly economy. The impact on small and medium-sized enterprises is particularly concerning. These businesses, which are the lifeblood of our economy, often lack the resources to navigate complex bureaucratic requirements or to implement extensive diversity and environmental programmes. As a result, they may find themselves shut out of government contracts, further concentrating economic power in the hands of large corporations that can afford to play the woke game. We're also seeing a worrying trend of self-censorship in the business community. Companies are becoming increasingly afraid to speak out against these policies for fear of being labelled as regressive or out of touch. This chilling effect on free speech and open debate is antithetical to the principles of a free market economy and a democratic society. It's crucial that we recognise this ideological push for what it is, a form of soft authoritarianism. By using the power of the purse to enforce compliance with this worldview, the government is effectively coercing businesses and individuals into conformity. This is a slippery slope that could lead to even more direct forms of state control over our economic and social lives. As we move forward, we must remain vigilant and vocal in our opposition to these misguided policies. We need a return to common sense governance that prioritises economic growth, individual liberty, and true value for money in public spending. The British people don't want this ideological overreach. We need the government to respect our hard-earned money, to understand the challenges faced by businesses, and to put the national interest above virtue signalling and eco-zealotry. We need transparency and accountability. The government should be required to provide clear evidence of how these new procurement rules will deliver better value for money and improved services. If they can't do that, then the rules should be scrapped immediately. Furthermore, we need to foster a culture of robust debate and critical thinking. It's not enough to simply oppose these policies. We must articulate a positive alternative vision for our country. one that embraces true diversity of thought, that celebrates individual achievement, and recognises the power of free markets to drive innovation and prosperity. In conclusion, these new procurement rules are not just a policy misstep. They represent a dangerous shift towards a more controlled, ideologically driven economy. We must call on the government to scrap these new rules and instead remove the barriers that prevent small and medium-sized businesses, the backbone of our economy, from winning important public contracts. This is Miriam Cates. Don't forget to subscribe to the GB News YouTube channel for more.